Here is an incredibly important but kind of stupid question. Let's say one day you inherit $100 billion and you decide, as most people would, that you are going to become Batman in real life. And I don't mean that metaphorically. You're going to try to recreate the entire Batman experience as much as could be done in the real world, which is quite a bit. You could absolutely have a bat cave with a bat computer in it. You could have a hydraulic platform that lifts up your Batmobile, and you could have a Batmobile with a jet engine in it. All of these are things that actually exist in the real world for the right price. You could even have the Bat plane, a little personal fighter jet that's shaped like a bat. If you're willing to pay for it, somebody will make that for you. So here is the incredibly important but kind of stupid question. Let's say you get your operation up and running. You are now ready to fight crime as Batman. So you spend your day pretending to be a normal billionaire. Then you put on the costume, you go down into the Batcave. The question is, how many people do you imagine work for you? How many employees do you have? Now already some of you are saying, well, I would just have the one. I would have Alfred, my butler, and then if we needed additional help, I guess we could get a Robin. We could abduct an orphan from the circus. But this is my point, and this is what we're here to talk about today, because this is actually the one part of the Batman fantasy that you could not recreate in the real world. The fact that he does all of this basically alone. Now, of course, this is obvious on some level. Any of you out there who are homeowners know how many people you've had to call just in the last 5 years to fix various things that are broken in your house. If Batman is trying to keep the secret of his operation, then every time he needs a water line fixed or wiring repaired or an update to his computer systems in his cave, he's got to have somebody on staff that can do all of that. He's got to have a crew of guys that can take care of basically everything, and it's a lot. You would need one guy whose job it is just to clean up the bat poop. Think about your little bat-shaped fighter jet. You know just from movies that for every fighter jet that's in the air, the military has a bunch of guys on the ground doing support. But of course they do. Just handling the fuel and storing it and transporting it is a task that requires a specialist if you don't want an explosion that will destroy the entire Batcave. If you've got bombs and missiles on your little fighter jet, then somebody has got to procure that stuff and then make sure it is being handled safely, again, unless you want a fatal explosion at some point. In the real world, Batman would not be a guy. It would be an organization or a small business. Now, this is not a new observation. We wrote an article about this at Cracked. But what's extremely important to notice here is how key to the fantasy this is, the idea that Batman doesn't need any help. Because some of you already are saying that the reason they write it that way is nobody wants to read a Batman comic or watch a Batman film where he spends half of his time dealing with personnel issues, where there's a crisis because the guy in charge of ordnance for the bat plane ordered the wrong bullets because he's been coming to work drunk a lot lately. And so now Bruce Wayne has to decide, do I fire the guy or do I hold an intervention? Because after all, if I fire him, then maybe he goes to the press. I can make him sign an NDA, but who knows if that's going to hold? And then how do I find a replacement? That's a very specialized task. It's got to be somebody I know I can trust. It just adds layer after layer of complication that nobody in the audience wants to deal with. But there's another layer here that I bet most of you have not thought about, which is, how many employees could Bruce Wayne / Batman have until he's got somebody on his crew who does not align with his mission perfectly? Somebody who themselves have a criminal background or maybe are currently doing crimes. Someone who, being on the payroll, would make Bruce Wayne a hypocrite, where he's out there trying to take down a crime family that's dealing drugs to Gotham, but the mechanic he hired to work on the engine of his bat plane, and by the way, he would have to have a team of mechanics, not one guy, but his engine guy buys drugs from the kingpin that Batman is trying to take down. Maybe his IT guy who works on the Bat computer is cheating on his taxes. Maybe his janitor is a womanizer and has a long string of very toxic, abusive relationships in his past. See, this too is part of the fantasy. The only way that Bruce Wayne and Batman can remain morally pure is if they just don't associate with anybody. But that, of course, is a fantasy. In the real world, it's not possible. To do what he does, to do anything, in fact, requires depending on some people who are problematic in some way. I think this is incredibly important because I see this everywhere. People in general seem to secretly hate how much they depend on strangers to live their lives. There's almost a kind of shame that comes with it, and it leads to people kind of being in denial about it. And this manifests itself in a whole bunch of different ways. So for example, there's a very popular type of content on TikTok and elsewhere that's just people filming themselves living off-grid. These are people who have quit their jobs and gone off into the wilderness, and they've got like solar panels to generate their own electricity, and they've got a well to get their own water, and they've got a garden to grow their own food, and maybe they raise chickens or something. But the idea is that they are self-sufficient. They're not working at a job. They're working all day, but the work is for themselves. They're working to feed themselves, and that's the fantasy. That's what's so appealing about it. I like to watch these videos myself because it's like they get up in the morning and they feed their chickens and they collect the eggs and they eat the eggs. They have total control over their own schedule. And the idea is, I'm not going to work a job that benefits society because I'm also not asking society to do anything for me. But it is an illusion. I specifically remember watching one of these guys, and he had a tree fall over on his property and boasted that he was going to go out there and cut it up himself for firewood. He was not going to call anybody. That's the whole thing, is that I am self-sufficient. I can do this myself. So then he goes to his tool shed and pulls out his chainsaw and talks about how this is his favorite brand of chainsaw. It's the only ones he'll buy. But the moment he picks up that chainsaw, think about how many thousands of people he is instantly depending on. Seriously, try to write down how many separate human beings it took to bring that machine into existence. Not just the people who work at the chainsaw factory, but the people who mined all of the minerals that became the metals in the chainsaw. The people who drilled for oil that became the plastic. All of the vehicles that had to drive those parts back and forth to the various factories, and then all of the people involved in making those vehicles. And then all of the engineers who came up with the design for the chainsaw, and then all of the previous engineers whose work that was building off of, going back decades. And then all of the people working boring office jobs, people in cubicles having to handle the scheduling and the payroll for all of this. In other words, the only reason that person was able to drop out of society and leave the rat race and to leave the soul-sucking office job behind is because lots of other people stayed in the rat race and kept working those soul-sucking office jobs. There have to be investments and financing and people in conference rooms in suits. There have to be lawyers and accountants. All of the type of people that this survivalist loathes, he cannot do what he's doing without them. I believe that almost everyone has some version of this delusion or fallacy that they live under. I believe that almost everyone fails to completely understand how badly they need the people they can't stand. I'm recording this on the cusp of the holiday season in the United States and elsewhere. So when trying to put out a message about peace on earth and goodwill toward your fellow humans, this was as close as I could get, because I don't think I can make any of you like your neighbors or the fellow citizens of your country. That is a matter of opinion. If you think most people are evil at heart, I can't change your mind about that. But if you think you don't need those people, that's just factually incorrect. That's like believing in a flat earth. I'm not here even saying that you should like everyone you see on the street or that they all deserve your respect. I don't know that they do. I'm only trying to get over this one specific barrier in people's minds, which is the idea that you don't need any of those people. When you wake up in the morning, how long can you go before you are instantly depending on tens of thousands of strangers? Like if you get up and flip on a light switch, okay, to get the power to your house, required thousands of people you'll never meet. When you go to the bathroom and turn on a faucet to get that water to come out of your faucet, required thousands of people you will never meet. Many of those people, if they met you, would hate you. They bitterly disagree with you. They have different moral systems than you have. They have beliefs that you would think are ridiculous, and you have beliefs that they would think are ridiculous. Some of them casually joke about killing you. When I say that we're all in this together, I don't mean that as an aspirational bumper sticker. I don't mean go find the most hateful person you can and put your arm around them and say, hey, let's go have a beer. We're all children of God. I'm saying we're all in this together, whether you like it or not. There's no not being in it together. You can tell yourself that. Most people do tell themselves that. But it is a fantasy. It is a fallacy. It is factually untrue. One way that this fallacy manifests itself that I see every single day, especially on the internet, is you will hear people talk about the problems in their country and all of the bad people in their country and the bad ideas in their country, and the way they want to fix it sounds like they're saying all of the bad people can just be banished to the phantom zone. Like they can make them go away somehow. In other words, instead of talking about banishing certain behaviors from society or banishing certain ideas from society, they will consistently talk about getting rid of certain people without specifying how. And most of them will not explicitly say that these people should be killed or that they should be purged from the country or forced to leave. Some people will, but most people will just talk about it as if they can be made to go away. Now, before I go any further, I understand that when a guy who looks like me gets in front of a camera with a microphone and starts talking about cancel culture and free speech, that this is the equivalent of when a family member starts showing signs of confusion, like they forget your name or they become confused about where they are. It is an early sign that something terrible is about to go wrong in their brain. It means the YouTuber or podcaster you're watching might be about to succumb to internet madness. I once followed a guy on Twitter whose whole deal was being a very moderate, common sense, bipartisan, just a centrist who's just wanting to do the right thing regardless of which party it helps or hurts. They just want common sense government, a common sense society. They then got embroiled in a Twitter controversy where a bunch of people were piling onto one of their friends. And a year later, that guy was just talking nonstop about race science and eugenics and about how we have to purge the species of the impure races. There are many such examples. One reason it drives people crazy is that when talking about cancel culture, no two people mean the same thing. Like I might say, yeah, it got out of control sometimes. I've seen some good progressive YouTubers who had an excellent reputation, but people dug up some old offensive tweets and then they just got inundated with death threats for months. So yeah, they were being canceled. It was kind of a moral panic there for a while. And then the person I'm speaking to will say, yeah, I know. And like Bill Cosby, whatever happened to that guy? I used to love his show and then they canceled him. And it's like, okay, I think we might not be talking about the same thing. But the part of cancel culture that always bothered me is specifically this, the idea that the canceled person can just be banished to the phantom zone. The idea that they don't need to continue to exist in society in any capacity. To just grab a random example, I don't personally think that comedian Louis C.K. was treated unfairly at all. I think what he did would get you fired and blacklisted from lots of jobs. I don't think he was railroaded. I don't think that was an example of wokeness having gone out of control. I think even if he didn't work in the entertainment industry, if he was just like a car salesman, if he applied for a job at a dealership, I don't care if the owner of that place is the most conservative, anti-woke guy in the world. If he's calling up his references And what he keeps getting back is, oh yeah, he's a pretty good car salesman, but he's got this weird thing. He's got like a fetish where he likes to get completely naked and jerk off in front of colleagues, like people he works with. Like, it's clear this is the specific fetish he has, is how inappropriate this is. And so, yeah, there's a lot of women who just won't get into a room alone with him because he's got that reputation. I think the guy doing the hiring would say, oh, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. No way. The only way you would hire him is if he was the only applicant. But even then, he'd be like, no, my daughter works here at the dealership. I'm not going to put her in a room with this guy. He's clearly got a problem. There's something wrong with his brain. So yeah, he lost a bunch of work. And yeah, part of it is just messaging, that you want to make it clear that this is not going to be tolerated. You want to make an example of him to let everybody else know you can't do this kind of thing. That's insane. We live in a society. But also, in any industry, at some point he would be allowed back. If he applied for a place and his reputation was he used to do this 10 years ago, but he hasn't done it in a long time, you would say, okay, well, he apparently has gotten over it or he's learned his lesson. And if you say, well, no, he should be permanently banished from that industry, he should have to go find some other career, I don't know that that necessarily would make sense to the average person, because it's like, okay, so he switches from selling cars to selling tractors. That somehow fixes the problem. It's just understood. He can't be banished to the phantom zone, whether you think it deserves it or not. He's going to continue to exist on Earth somewhere, and he's going to have to continue to work. So when Louis C.K. made his comeback, he didn't make his comeback by starring in a blockbuster film or by being in a sitcom. He just started doing stand-up. And there were a whole bunch of videos that went viral on TikTok and elsewhere of people standing in front of Madison Square Garden, where it had the big poster of his face saying, see, cancel culture literally does not exist. Because he suffered literally no consequences because he gets to do his stand-up. And I will confess, I don't understand that, because is the complaint that there's still people out there that want to buy the tickets? If so, okay, I get it. But if he's saying, I need to work, and if you've got people out there saying, I will pay him to do the work being, I want him to stand up on a stage and tell me jokes. I have my money. I'm ready to buy a ticket. He's ready to perform. In your ideal society, who do you feel like should intervene to stop that from happening? Are you upset with the venue for hosting it? And if they did, if every venue on the planet banished him from performing there, so he couldn't even perform in somebody's basement, if you found out that Louis C.K. opened a restaurant in your neighborhood, would you not also boycott that? Would you not also be on their social media saying, hey, nobody should work for this guy, he's a creep? Or if you just found out he was working as a cook at that restaurant, would you boycott it? To be clear, my position is not that he doesn't deserve it. My position is not that you should feel sorry for him or that you were too mean to him. My position is that you cannot banish him to the phantom zone. So what do you see as the ideal outcome there? Where online, at least, there's this persistent belief that if we can just get him out of our view so that we don't see him on Twitter or we don't see him on a billboard, then we fix the problem. Because mentally, yeah, you have banished him to another dimension. He no longer exists in reality. If you want an example from the other side, look no further than the whole criminal justice system. My whole problem with this from the beginning has been the idea that if you throw somebody in prison, now you fixed it. You got them off the street. It's like, yeah, but you didn't get them off the street into the phantom zone. You put them in a building with a bunch of other hardened criminals. And they're going to be in there for a few years. And then when they get out, they are going to have to continue to exist in society somehow. So we have this system where people will not hire ex-felons. And it's like, what do you think the outcome of that is going to be? It seems to be the exact same out of sight, out of mind fallacy, where as long as I can't see this person, the problem has gone away. But they continue to exist. And if your system doesn't account for that, then your system is going to break down at some point. And somebody is going to complain that it is nuts for me to equate those two things as being equal. Comedians being canceled or minorities being thrown into prison for 20 years. I'm not saying they're equal. I'm saying that nobody is interested in reform because they both just think in terms of eliminating the person from the equation. The Christian ideal of forgiving somebody or the progressive ideal of trying to reform somebody, in neither case is it about saying that, well, they're not so bad, or the thing they did, is it even really a crime? No, in both cases, it's acknowledging that what they did was bad, but saying that as a strategy for society, there has to be a process for bringing these people back into the fold, because you cannot simply banish them to the phantom zone. When I say you cannot, I don't mean that morally you can't do it. I'm saying it's not possible. But people on the right are sickened by the idea of forgiving or reforming the murderer, and people on the left are sickened by the idea of reforming or forgiving the sexual harasser, or the landlord, or the health insurance executive. Another way you see this play out is with boycotts. There were a lot of people making fun of the conservatives who were boycotting Bud Light beer because the beer they switched to was also owned by the same company. But you can do that with almost every boycott. I'll even use myself as an example for this. I'm not going to watch that Harry Potter TV show they're making that they're spending like $1 billion on. I don't want to put money in J.K. Rowling's pocket, but I'm still going to watch stuff on HBO, the company that is paying to do this. My subscription to HBO is part of what is going to pay her. I'm still going to watch stuff from the actors that are in the show, even though those actors are helping to bring audiences to the show, and then that helps put money in her pocket. Also, she loses how much money from me not watching her show? I don't know, $4? Meanwhile, I will pay a guy $3,000 to repair my house without spending even 1 minute finding out if that guy is a transphobe or a homophobe or a racist. And even if I did do that research, who's to say that the materials he's using were not bought from a company that funds hateful causes? My boycott is purely symbolic. It's just like the survivalist in the desert telling himself that he has cut himself off from society. And J.K. Rowling could come to my house and go to my bookshelf, and she could find stuff on there from H.P. Lovecraft, who was one of the most racist men who ever lived. She could find where I've bought albums from musicians who beat their wives, paintings from artists who molested children, I don't know, that I'm driving in a car burning oil from Saudi Arabia, and living in a country on land that was stolen from Native Americans. That the only way you can tell yourself that you are keeping yourself morally pure by not interacting with the bad people is by just turning a blind eye toward 99% of the things you consume. I do not want to get heavily into the subject of banning or deplatforming or censoring people, because I do not want to make this my entire personality, which is, I think, the requirement if you start talking about this too much. But it also is based on the idea that if we just get this hateful person off of this platform, then they're gone. They're in the phantom zone. And what I feel like we have learned over the last 10 years is that while I don't disagree with banning a lot of these people, I banned these people from my own message board, which I ran for almost 20 years. But I don't know that it did anything to lessen their movement or to stop the growth of it. Because, of course, they didn't vanish into the phantom zone. They just went to another platform. And if they got kicked off there, they went to another one. On the internet, it's impossible to just ban them from everything. There will always be another platform. And once they arrive on the new platform where they are there only among other extremists, they then tend to become more extreme because they're now in a place where they're not getting any pushback from their comments or other people on that platform. It's very similar to the problem we had with prison, where you take somebody who is young and has broken the law, and then you lock them up for 5 years with a bunch of hardened criminals. They kind of just learn how to be a hardened criminal. you could make the case that it would have done more for the cause of stopping hate to actually confront these people and try to show them the error of their ways, because a lot of them were very young and had just come into this stuff, and actually their minds were malleable. Maybe we could have steered them in another direction. There may be some specific kid out there who I banned from the message boards 10 years ago because they showed up just citing black crime statistics. And maybe when they left our message board, maybe they went to 4chan, or maybe they went somewhere else. And maybe in that other place, they found nothing but agreement and reinforcement. And if you're saying it is not our job to have to listen to abuse just so that we can try to educate these Nazis, I agree. I didn't think it was my job, but also I noticed that they didn't go away. And hey, there was a time in the past when you probably could do this. If you had a small village out on the frontier and there was one guy who was pretty much a dirtbag, you could just send him out of town. Say, you're banished, don't come back. I actually think that's where a lot of the impulse comes from. Just in evolutionary terms, yeah, probably once upon a time you could just make somebody leave the tribe. But you're watching this on a device whose components probably come from 25 different countries. Your dinner was probably grown in red states and blue states and Mexico. Just the process of getting it to you involved Democrats and Republicans and weird libertarians. You cannot boycott all of the bad people. You cannot purge all of the bad people. You cannot deport all of the bad people. And you certainly cannot kill all of the bad people. So if you feel like society is infected with hate and ignorance, I won't disagree with you. But when we say that you need to use language about persuading people or bringing them into the fold rather than implying that they need to be eliminated, it's not just because we're saying that morally it's the right thing to do. We're saying it's the only possible way to do it. They're not going anywhere. You don't want them to go anywhere. You need them. The people you loathe, the people that you think are everything that's wrong with society, some of them are building your houses and mining your coal and growing your food. And even if a person or a group doesn't seem to be contributing anything useful, they can be contributing in ways that are invisible to you. Or, at the very least, the same tendencies in society that allow them to exist also allow you to exist. If you don't know what I mean, just stop and think about it for a minute. So, yes, for my feel-good holiday video message, this is as good as I can do for you. That when I say that we're all in this together, I'm not saying that's a good thing at all. I'm not bringing that to you as good news or as an aspiration. I'm saying, like it or not, we are all in this together. That's the kind of society we have built. And in my experience, if you want people to live the way you do and think the way you do, if you believe that your personal lifestyle and your philosophy is the right way that everybody should be doing it, in my experience, the most compelling case you can make for that is to live your life in a way that makes other people want to do it. That makes other people want to be around you or want to be around people like you. If they sense that there is hope and optimism and joy in your life. And if you can go forth and do that, if you can achieve that kind of state of mind, if you can be the kind of person that attracts other people, tell me how you did it, and then I'll try it. One day, a woman you've never met before offers you $100,000 cash to drive her across the country. Half now, half when you arrive, 2,600 miles. But there's a catch. She has with her a large, locked black box, big enough that you could crawl inside of it. She says you're not allowed to look inside the box, and in fact, you're not even allowed to ask any questions about the box. She says you have to leave behind any devices that can be tracked. No phone, no laptop, no credit cards, no GPS navigation. You'll be paying with cash and navigating with a paper map the whole way. And finally, she says you cannot tell anyone where you're going, and no, you cannot have time to think about it. We leave now. You hesitate. She doubles the offer. Would you do it? Maybe, if you're brave enough or desperate enough. And besides, you think, what's the worst that can happen?